Welcome to Boundless Pursuit, a weekly podcast providing motivation, entertainment, and education to anglers and outdoorsmen. I hope that the stories you'll find here will encourage you to chase your passion more fervently, to open your mind to new opportunities and perspectives. Your engagement and feedback is critical to the growth of this show, and I would love to hear your suggestions on topics or potential guests. You can reach me at boundlesspursuitfishing@gmail.com or at my website, www.boundless-pursuit.com. That's where you'll find all related articles, media, and merchandise. Please remember, the show will gain traction from your support. Be sure to like, comment, and share this podcast to your friends and connections. I'm your host, David Graham. Now let's get on to today's episode. The whole reason that I put this podcast together was to highlight diverse angling opportunities at home and abroad, showcasing the common interest in the pursuit of fish and experiences from anglers across the country and across the world. The guys that you're going to hear from today, like most anglers, love big fish, like really big fish. And they're coming to you all the way from the Netherlands. Florian, Kappen, and Maximilian Claus of the Fishing and Conservation Instagram page specialize in the pursuit and the study of freshwater megafauna species. As aquatic ecologists and marine biologists, their adventures serve the dual purpose of gaining a better understanding of giant freshwater fish and having some serious fun as two very skilled anglers. Their pursuits of giant freshwater fish have taken them all over the world, from the jungles of Suriname chasing giant 300-pound catfish to their own stomping grounds around Europe for massive pike and carp. They've also come right here to the U.S. for alligator gar, sturgeon, and plenty of other interesting bycatch along the way. I had a lot of fun talking to these guys. It was a really cool opportunity to get to reach out to and communicate with a couple of like-minded, passionate anglers from across the ocean. I think you're going to enjoy this one.
Yep.
All right. So we're recording now. So all the way from the Netherlands, Max and Florian, happy to have y'all on here. This is all new. This is all like first time I've done this. I haven't had more than one person on, and I've not had somebody that's over on the other side of the world. But how's it going, guys?
It's going great. We're very excited to be here. Thank you for the invite. And well, let's see how it goes from this side of the world.
Yeah, doing good.
No, surprisingly good. It's I don't know. You never know how the internet. It's funny. I can call somebody that lives 10 minutes from me and lose connection to them. But then here we are talking from there's a whole ocean between us, and so far so good. So hopefully we can keep it that way. Florian, I saw you give a little cough there, so you might be like me. I'm a little under the weather. I'm gonna try my best to not cough into your ears and hit the mute. But I've been trying to shake this thing for a while now. But anyway, I have been seeing these two Dutch guys for the last couple of years constantly posting these giant fish. So I knew I needed to get y'all on here and ask more about what you're doing, because what y'all seem to be doing goes beyond just, I don't know, fishing for fun, because I know that you're doing some conservation work. I know that you're doing something that kind of is bigger picture than just going and trying to get those hero shots, but your photos are amazing. The fish you're catching are amazing. One day you seem like you're overseas. The next day it's alligator gar. Then you're back over in, South America. Then you're back here catching more Florida. Fish in Florida, fish in Texas. I'm like, these guys are getting all over the place. So I've been a big fan of y'all's stuff for a while, but I guess most recently, Florian, you were down in Suriname doing something that's a major dream destination mine, catching those giant piraiba catfish. So before we do anything, because that's so fresh on my mind, you got to tell me about that expedition.
Sure. Yeah. I think fishing wise, so far that has been the like recreational fishing wise, that's definitely been the most memorable experience for me so far. I think I can speak for both Max and me that we've had this dream to go into the Amazon rainforest for so long. We even, like you already mentioned the conservation stuff. We even had almost figured out a way to study like arapaima twice, but both of the projects got cancelled. So two times we thought we would go to the Amazon rainforest, and then it got cancelled. And
oh man,
well, after that we did the alligator gar stuff. But so it's been on our minds for so long, and now I finally got to do it a couple of months ago. And I mean, I fell in love with the rainforest. Let's say that it's so beautiful, and like the expedition, that we did was obviously you need some kind of guide. Like you need like boats, you need place to sleep, whatever. So we couldn't just go out on our own, unfortunately, which we prefer to do. This was with our other buddy Niels. Which I guess we'll mention more in this podcast, because the three of us kind of fish together a lot, and he's also a big part of what we do in recreational fishing. But we got in touch with this guy in Suriname, and he offers trips like this where you just literally just you have a houseboat. Or more like a raft houseboat that he created especially for fishing. He's even got beds in there. He's got a little kitchen, a cooler. He's got a generator on there. And basically what we did is just over the course of 9 days, we pushed the houseboat up the river by boat. It was like a river where the tide like literally shifts the whole direction of the flow of the river. So tide needed to be coming inward to push the raft upstream, or with the flow. So it took like multiple days for us to finally reach the right spot where there wasn't too much current from the tide. And where there were actually piraiba, or where it was easier to catch the piraiba. So it took a couple of days before we finally were able to successfully fish for piraiba. But just like I'm saying, like 9 days, just pushing the raft up the river, and trying to find those piraiba. And man, it's such an awesome experience just being out there on the river in the Amazon rainforest, and no connection, no cell phone connection. Just fishing like almost 24 hours a day for 9 days. Like even at night, you know the bait alarm systems. You saw it yesterday as well. Max was using it. So even like when we were sleeping, we had 3 rods out, bait alarm on there, and well, if you get a bite, you wake up. But I mean, I can tell you that you're not really sleeping very deeply when you're expecting a bite.
I bet you jump out of bed for that morning alarm clock a lot faster than you do if you're going to report into some bum job. I don't know, but it seems like y'all do some pretty exciting stuff for work as well, and we'll get into that. But I can totally relate when it comes to dreaming about fishing the Amazon. I've been that way since I was a little kid. I think a lot of kids all over the world probably do, especially if you have any kind of fascination with wildlife. But I mean, I was that little boy, like nerdy little kid to where I probably isolated myself to a point from even making friends, because I would be always outside, nothing but a pair of shorts on, running around trying to catch some kind of animals. I had set up my room to look like the Amazon rainforest. I mean, it was corny as can be. I had all these like, toy animals all in the place and I just dreamed of going to the Amazon. So even to this day, that is still in there. But, you talk about, you had to go with guides, but that's different. At least this isn't like you're going with like some sort of established, well, they may be established, but they're not, I imagine, holding your hand to a point and making the whole experience like overly comfortable, because you're having to do all that travel. Yep, I mean, you're still contending with the bugs, the elements, the uncomfortable nights of sleep and things like that. So, but for people who are listening that may not know what a piraiba even is, I mean, a lot of folks who are listening may not know much more than, bluegills and bobbers. But describe what a piraiba is. Just, I mean, so people understand the scale of what you travel to go catch.
Sure. So yeah, first of all, as you were mentioning, like, yeah, there were guides, but indeed, like, we had quite some freedom as well. So we could like say, okay, but our feeling says like we need to stay here, or we need to move, or whatever. So that was pretty nice about this whole experience. That, like, I guess if you go with like a charter or whatever, like on sea, like he puts you on the fish and you just start fishing, right? And here we had some freedom to play around, and we even learned more and more as we got more bites, and we started changing our setup and whatever. So that was pretty fun, yeah. But yeah, piraiba catfish. So I'm already mentioning it. It's catfish, and they're humongous.
Mm-hmm.
They are. I think the world record is like 2 meter 80 centimeters, something like that, or if I'm not mistaken, like over 2.5 meters easily. So I don't know how much this is in feet. I can't do the conversion on the top of my head.
I know. You know what? Before this call, I feel like I should have brushed up on my conversions when it comes to that. Because when you say meters, I'm like, I don't know what the heck that means. Well, I know what it means, but I have to like sit and think about it. But
yeah,
for American listeners, piraiba catfish can get, and correct me if I'm wrong, hundreds and hundreds of pounds. Like the size that could, you know, I don't want to make things sound monstrous and scary, but like man-eating proportions. Arguably one of, if not the biggest, freshwater fish. Now that's y'all's specialty.
That's
you and Max both traveling all over the place, specializing in large freshwater fish. But I still don't even know, like, what is considered it. I mean, what is the biggest freshwater fish? Because I hear arapaima, I hear those giant stingray out in Thailand. I hear piraiba. I'm like, okay, Siamese carp, which I don't even know if those even exist in the wild anymore. But I know the piraiba's up there, is it not? I mean, are they in contention for that title of biggest freshwater fish on the planet?
So it's it's kind of a debate if you count fish that migrate between salt and fresh water.
Exactly.
Yeah. Because otherwise you probably have the beluga sturgeon, which is huge. I mean, those fish grow like over 1,000 pounds.
Right.
Could grow. Let's say could
there's
grow.
There's basically nothing that can compete with that. And you also have white sturgeon, which are also huge.
Mm-hmm.
But fully freshwater fish, weight-wise, I would guess Mekong catfish.
Yeah. And that's another weird one. It's like, you know, I'm seeing those in some of those kind of controlled environment lakes that they have over there. But, and I think occasionally they pop up in nets, but I don't know how much, you know, people are really seeing those out in the wild anymore. But it definitely, when you see the photos of a really, really big mature one, you're like, oh my goodness, like that's hard to compare against.
Yeah, they're extremely rare in the wild these days. There is some conservation work on those going on. I believe Zeb Hogan, he caught one in the wild with nets. But if you try to catch them with rod and reel, your efforts will probably be futile, because these fish, like many other fish in the world, they're, especially these big fish, they're endangered because of habitat loss, construction of dams. I mean, these fish, they migrate hundreds of miles to get to their spawning grounds. And then we construct a dam, and
river regulation,
electric power from that, and then these fish can't reach their spawning grounds anymore. And then you have overfishing in many places. I mean, not every country that these fish inhabit has the same regulations or same protection going on. So all these factors, they're pressing on these populations, and they just continue dwindling. And actually, giant freshwater fish, their numbers are declining more rapidly than basically any other group of species in the world.
Right.
Like if you look at terrestrial habitats, like mammals and animals like that, birds, these fish are declining multiple factors faster.
So aquatic life in general, I think, is indeed like declining most rapidly, and then I don't know if exactly fish are the most out of the aquatic life, like most declining, most of those, that group. But then from the fish, the mega fish are the ones that really are under pressure.
Yeah.
I don't know from the top of my head, but I think it was around, wasn't it like close to 90% or something population decline, or 70 or 90 something?
So for megafauna fish, fish over 25 that can weigh over 25 kilograms, I believe was even 95%.
95,
wow.
Yeah. I was thinking 94, but I didn't want to over.
No, but at least those numbers are extremely high. I mean, if it was 50%, it would already be high, but
it's basically, I think it's crazy that it.
And what do they think is what's the biggest factor, I guess, globally? Is it just overharvest? Is it habitat encroachment?
I think
building of dams that's keeping them from reaching like critical spawning grounds, or like a combination of all of these things?
It depends on the species, but for most of them, all three factors are main contributors. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah. But
there's not a lot of enforcement on laws. So even if you have a protected area or protected species, there's not a lot of education going on to teach people why it's important to preserve these fish. And there's also no enforcement to make sure that they don't continue their ways and destroying these populations.
Yeah. I think in most how do you say this, like Europe, the US, Asia, like the very populated areas of the world, it's mostly river regulation, I think, where like Max already said, like spawning habitat really gets like disconnected or degrades, but also like juveniles also need a different kind of habitat, like very specific as well. And then I guess mostly adults, they can survive more harsh circumstances, but if they never reach the adult size, then that's already a problem, right? So I guess those very populated parts is mostly river regulation, but then you have maybe, for instance, in South America, like the guys I talked with, like the guides in Suriname, they told us about Guyana, which is north of Suriname. People fish for piraiba for consumption a lot there.
Yeah.
And apparently over there, so there's not really that much river regulation because the rivers are just they're in their natural state basically. But the people from Guyana are moving to Suriname now because numbers are declining so much in Guyana. So I think there's really something needs to be done there to protect the piraiba in Guyana. And well, maybe in the future we could hop in, Max, but those are big plans and not easy to achieve, but who knows?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because I think, a big part of the reason why I'm a fan of what y'all are doing is you're giving that first step, which is just exposure that these things exist in the first place. Because I know here in America, like, if I throw up a photo of a piraiba to people or any of these giant monstrous fish that, people should know exist or be able to identify, folks don't know what it is. They think, well, was that caught here? Like, what is that? So I don't think you can really care about the well-being of something, obviously, if you don't even know it exists. So the fact that y'all are getting out there and, I've scrolled both of your pages, your main page and your individual pages, and seen some of the seminars that you've done speaking on the importance of these things. So that's commendable. And it seems like there's not a lot of voices out there. But I think, some of the recent TV programs that kind of became mainstream here in the States, I don't know if they play elsewhere, but, your Monster Fish with Zeb Hogan, the River Monsters, and those kind of things, even though there's an element of drama and and myths and monsters involved, it at least kind of opens the window for people to like see, okay, those things exist. Now, perpetuating some kind of myth that they're out to eat your kids and your dog, maybe not so good, but it's probably also hard to keep a TV program on air for so many seasons if you're not adding an element of mystery or crime solving or drama. So it's sort of like, I don't know, it's like a necessary evil to at least get people to understand that these things are out there. You know what's funny is I know, like, Max, Florian, both of y'all, y'all catch the Wales catfish, European catfish, whatever you want to call them, right there in your backyard. You wouldn't believe how oftentimes I'll go to local tackle stores here in America and see like the same photo of guys holding a giant Wales catfish. And it's like, there's like a caption on it that it was caught below the dam. I'm like, that's not true. That is a lie. Those don't live. We have these myths here. And I'm always curious if they exist where y'all live too. But like, you go to any major lake in like the southern United States, maybe the whole United States, there's these stories of these mythical Volkswagen-sized catfish that live below the dam that scare the welders away. I mean, the story is like so consistent in so many different states across so many miles of these giant man-eating catfish. I'm always kind of curious. Do y'all have the similar fairy tales that people tell where you're at?
I can't think of anything like this.
People are smarter there. We got a bunch of dummies over here.
Oh, we got dummies here as well. But
there's always a story of the big one that got away or the big one that someone has seen. So it's also one of those things that attracts us to the bank each time, because you don't know what's down there. There could be a big catfish, but who knows how big it is? I mean,
right. Well, what's also funny is you also don't know when the bite's going to come. And ironically, and I'm going to have to throw this video up, but it was like the best thing ever. So yesterday, for anybody listening, because y'all are an ocean away, like I was very scared that maybe like there would be connectivity issues or we'd run into problems. So, we did sort of like an icebreaker call, which a few times I'll do that with guys that are coming on the show, just so they know what they're getting into. And I know what I'm getting into and I know what I'm working with. And I answer any questions. But Max, what I loved it, you were fishing while we were on the call, which I felt bad about because I'm like, oh man, I'm interrupting. But it was also
you weren't interrupting at all. I mean,
right. I
had to wait for the take. So
right. So you were in the middle of fishing, and it was like right before I was going to turn off the call. I think Florian, you and I are talking. You just hear this faint voice in the background, like "I'm on," or like "Fish on."
yeah.
So that's awesome.
Really
but you were pike fishing. So.
Yes.
But that was interesting. I think that kind of highlights you don't know what's going to bite. You don't know when it's going to bite. But also it was like kind of a cool opportunity for me to see like in real time the way that you're fishing. Because, here in the States, you don't see the setup that you're using to catch those monster pike. But I mean, I can't let this call go by without asking about like, I don't know, y'all's pike fishing scene. It's crazy. I mean, Max walked me a little bit through that, some of the gear you're using, the approach that y'all use, the size and the caliber of the pike that you catch. I mean, people that are listening got to go check y'all stuff out because it's preposterous.
So there's basically two ways that we target pike, and one is more passive. It means we use bait alarms and use a dead bait fish. By the way, we aren't allowed to use live bait fish in the Netherlands, so we use dead bait, and we prefer dead saltwater fish because they're more oily. They have a lot more smell, so we typically use saltwater bait fish.
Debatable, Max. Some waters.
Debatable. Yes, I know. But that's with the bait alarms, we toss out one of these bait fish in. Preferably a very, very large lake. And we typically also beforehand, we try to figure out the spots because, you can toss your bait anywhere, but if you don't know what you're doing, you're not going to catch anything, especially these huge fish of which are not too many in one lake.
Right.
So, Can I interrupt?
Jump in.
Yeah, so indeed, like the very most important thing of fishing with dead bait, like static fishing with dead bait, is your fishing spot, like the location, and especially in winter, where all the fish like they move to the winter holding areas, right? So if you're not fishing on that exact spot, then you're not going to catch anything, or at least you're not going to catch well, especially on those big lakes. And then you can go the easy route, which in the Netherlands is going fishing in harbors, but like every idiot to say the name does that, so we don't prefer doing that. We like to sit on the big lake and find this one specific spot where they are at, but yes, that requires a lot of knowledge. So that's the trick of dead bait fishing, I would say, is really knowing where to present your bait, and that's what makes it hard and sometimes very tough. But go ahead, Max, continue.
Yeah, I mean, that's you nail it with that answer. And apart from finding that spot, finding the right lake, we like to explore. We like to find new spots that are not very common or popular for everyone to fish. But Florian and our buddy Niels, when we talked about earlier, they also like to go and chase these pike actively with lures. So yeah, for that we use huge baits. I mean, I can grab one from the back here.
Yeah, do it for sure, and then we'll just describe.
I mean, in the meantime, while I'm grabbing one of those baits, Florian can explain more about that.
Sure, yeah, perfect. Yeah. It's like tag team effort. Tag him in.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the benefit of having two people here.
Yeah.
All right, one sec.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's not only giant baits, though. Most often we prefer big baits, but because big baits catch big fish, and it's easily like you were saying about the jacks yesterday. That those big ones, they really want just that one big meal. That's I guess it goes for pike as well. But the big baits we mostly use for trolling, and then we get like the biggest lake systems in the Netherlands. And yeah, you try to figure out those seasonal patterns. Where are the bait fish at which time of the year? So where the bait fish are, that's where you can expect the pike, obviously. And so I think the most preferable way is like casting, and the most fun thing, I would say, like really, I really love doing this, is in spring, as pike are going to spawn, they all move up the shallows.
Yeah.
So you'll have like, I don't know, like from a foot to 3 feet of water, or maybe to 6, but like very shallow water, where you're just casting your often jerk baits, and you have these massive pike. Like sometimes you see them grab your lure, and like,
okay, so you're just like sight casting at them.
No. We find a spot where we know for sure that they will move up to, like a shallow area.
Oh, okay.
And then like there's so many pike moving up there, you can get crazy days with so many big fish, and like you'll catch like say a 30-pound pike, like on like just a little bit of water, and
geez, yeah,
because it's so shallow, you like there's a little distance between the bait and your pike and the pike. So yeah, it's so effective and so much fun. So I guess that would be the most fun way. But like it depends from casting is our preference, to mostly in winter time when it's more tough, when the pike move deeper and the bait fish move deeper, like sometimes up to 20 meters, which let me think of the conversion. I looked up the conversion, so 20.
Well, what I've been noticing, been impressed by, is like the difference in just the body proportions and the build of the fish over there. Like I've never caught a pike. It's something I want to catch, but just haven't done it yet. But it's, you very seldom see, like, our pike seem much more like sleek, athletic, like torpedo shaped fish, smaller. There's still some big ones, like and if you expand out to just North America as a whole, Canada's got amazing pike fishing and big ones, but still the ones y'all are catching seem so much more like robust and like thick and just I don't know, just monstrous pike. And that's so weird to me, because I see the same thing out of y'all's carp, which I want to get to in a minute. But Max, I got to see these lures that y'all are throwing at these things.
Yeah.
I've got 2 with me now, and well, this is the type of lure. So this is my lower arm.
Oh my goodness! So people listening, this is this lure he's holding. It looks like a Savage Gear trout.
Yeah,
but it's probably big. You know, what's funny is there's people out there that lure is bigger than any fish a lot of people have caught on rod and reel. Like this thing is massive.
And so the idea behind this is like what I was getting into, like when the pike move very deep, like maybe sometimes even 20 meters, which is 60 feet. I just converted it. Like when you use these giant baits with a big profile, and you don't have to fish them like you can fish them like halfway on the water column, let's say. Mm-hmm. And because it's such a big profile and such a good, easy meal for a pike, they will come up like 5 to 10 meters. So like to, I guess, 30 feet, just to come grab that lure. And that's why it's so extremely effective for those big pike. And yeah, then we try to, well, our buddy Niels and I, when we fish from the boat nowadays, we get 3 rods each on each side of the boat. And I don't know if you've ever heard of planer boards.
Yes.
Yeah. So basically it's this floating device that makes your lures go to the side of the or away from the boat to the side, and then we get 6 rods out, and it's like literally on the right spot, trying to make a lot of distance and just try to find a needle in a haystack basically, and
it's the planer boards. Those planer boards are a pretty interesting little device that kind of lets you like. For anybody that doesn't know what they are, and I've not used them, but I've watched a lot of interesting videos where you can kind of set it to control, how close or how far out from the boat you're trolling with that your lure is. And it also allows you to troll multiple rods so that you're not, having tangles immediately behind the boat. But also some fish aren't going to want to strike in your direct path that you've just gone over. But it's funny. I saw a video a while back of a guy that he would sit in his vehicle and drive along a dike, like parallel to a canal or like a river, and with a planer boards, and just drive his car. And that's how he was trolling, with a planer board out along like a levee. But it's pretty entertaining. And I'm going to tell you, looking at that lure, there's no chance in hell I'm going to want to spend a day trying to cast that thing. Your arm's going to fall off. But
I've done so. Full days of casting.
No way.
Well, not exactly this lure, but other lures that are maybe just a hair smaller. But yeah, I don't know.
You've been casting baits like this.
Probably. Yeah.
And the lure is just a smaller pike. So Max is here holding up another lure, trying to catch pike with a lure that is another pike smaller, because, and that's another crazy thing, is that they will very happily just eat their own, which is just, it's just crazy. Yeah.
Sometimes they even regulate their populations that way. Like, because the adults will just feed on the juveniles. It really regulates how many juveniles will reach maturity. So that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I'm curious. I mean, what is y'all opinion? Like, it's the carp is the same thing. It seems like those European strain carp, or the carp over there, are much like shorter, stockier. Sometimes they're more bigger around than they are even long. You just don't see that here in the state. Occasionally you'll see one that kind of looks that way, but they just seem so different than like our fish, which get long, they get big, but very seldom will you see the ones that are so big around. I know y'all are pretty heavy in the carp scene as well, but you got those really crazy looking leather carp and mirror carp and wild scaled pattern fish that are so thick. But I'm just interested, is it the diet? I mean, what is it?
So first of all, Max can explain about the carp because he's the carp specialist. But so you're saying this about the pike and the carp, and the pike in the Netherlands are just extremely big and fat, because apparently we have perfect conditions for that. So that's totally natural. But the carp, they have a little twist to that, why they reach these proportions, and I'll let Max explain.
Yeah. So I know carp is not that popular of a game fish in the United States for a lot of people. But in Europe, it's probably the number one sports fish.
Right.
So there's a whole scene going on, and there's a lot of selective breeding going on with these fish, and a lot of stocking. So there's people that have been breeding these fish for years and years. So, for example, 40 years ago, if you would catch a 30 or 40 pound fish, it would be a really big one. But due to this selective breeding, we now have fish that go over 100 pounds.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, that's like world record size, but still those fish are out there, and there's plenty 50, 60 pounders out there, and just due to selective breeding. And then of course there's a huge carp scene, so a lot of food goes in, like boilies and all of this stuff. And in these isolated lakes, these fish mostly depend on the fishermen feeding them.
These world record carp would have never reached that size without like a lot of feeding by the owner of the lake and the carp fishermen. You'll not find 100-pounder in the wild, even after selective breeding. But yeah, the selective breeding is a big part of it. Like,
yeah,
just like with dogs, we created all those different strains of dogs. Well, with carp, it's not really also strains, of course, with the mirror carp and whatever.
And the koi variants.
Of course,
all the crazy color variations.
Forgot about that.
Yeah.
But now the selection is mostly size. They want them like very high and very fat, and length doesn't really matter.
Shortest amount of time.
Yeah. Fast growing fish.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's a culture of fishing that's growing here in the United States. I mean, there's some real diehard people. It's definitely started to turn, but it's not gotten to that level. But you're even starting to see more and more people adopting the same kind of tactics that y'all use over there here, and even more and more guys from overseas are coming here to catch our carp, which is, that's interesting to me, that people would travel around the world to catch the exact same species of fish. But it's, I don't know, that's an interesting type of fishing that I've never got good at. I've dabbled in it a little bit. My buddy Austin Anderson is one of the young guys that's kind of leading that charge out here, and he's coupling that with the buffalo fishing that we do, which has also kind of started to garner a lot of interest from the guys. He's getting clients from Asia and Europe, and he's, I think, a big part of the people that are coming to even fish with them at all are folks overseas, which is pretty neat.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, we don't have buffalo carp, but I think it's mostly the adventure that goes along with it as well. So the United States, you've got these really wild, remote areas, these big lakes, no one else fishing for these fish. And then if you have a couple of big fish on a lake in Europe, there's a lot of people fishing for these fish. So you're kind of repeating someone else's success, or you're fishing for these specific fish. And for me, it takes away from the adventure, and apparently for a lot of other people as well.
Yeah. Now that makes sense when you put it that way. But yeah, so the other thing that's kind of interesting about y'all is I know we're talking about like a lot of your home waters and some of the things you've done outside the United States, just out of my personal interest, because I want to travel, but y'all are also coming to the States a lot and highlighting some of the real unique fish that we have right here in my backyard, or our backyard, and namely the alligator gar. I think the first time I came across your pages was these just magnificent photos that you take of these big alligator gar, because that's a scene that's real peculiar to me, and that our biggest freshwater predator in all of North America still hasn't become like a mainstream thing. Not a lot of people going after it. It's like one of the great fishing mysteries of the world, that American anglers aren't crawling over the top of each other to go catch one of these things. But I'm curious, because I know y'all have come out and done a lot of science work with them, and that's what I'm really interested in, because it's a fish that I think here in America we need to take a lot more pride in, because I consider it like our heavyweight champion. Unlike, we've got white sturgeon, but to your point, by nature, they're supposed to be going into and out of the oceans, but you do have landlocked populations of those. But our alligator gar, I'm just, I feel like more people need to understand the reality of the fish because it's so big and scary. They have this sort of negative perception about them. But I want to know, like, the kind of work and the nature of the work that y'all are doing with them. Like, what exactly are you accomplishing when you're coming out and sampling these things?
There's multiple aspects to that. For us, it's a lot about raising awareness for these species and, well, seeing why they're misunderstood and everything. But research-wise, it's discovering, well, very basic elements of these fish, actually, because we don't know a lot about these fish. So we had research going on their movements, like do they use a wide range of the river? Do they use a small section of the river? What specific type of habitat do they use or prefer? So yeah, those type of things are not well understood about these species yet. There's some rivers that are really well studied, but for example, the alligator gar in Florida have been found out to behave completely different from fish in Texas, for example.
Well, maybe not completely different, but it's definitely a very different situation.
Yeah.
They're much more rare. They had a very hard time figuring out how to effectively sample for them, and they don't still. I think I don't know if they even know where they spawn yet. At least when we went over to Florida, they definitely didn't know. But Florida is apparently an exception to the rule, I guess, in the way everything works. But they're right on top of it. And man, I've heard some of the stories of how many, because we were doing these things as internships, right, for our studies. Mm-hmm. So we were just for a shorter amount of time, for like half a year, either assisting or working on a project to figure something out, like a new river or set up this research. But these guys in Florida now, they got so many, like they tag them, right? They catch them and they tag them and they follow their movements. Where do these fish go? And they have so many receivers out now that they're gathering like very valuable and beautiful data on what these alligator gar are doing. That's really cool stuff.
They've got a great team over there.
It's obviously, now that I live in Florida, it's one of those things I've looked at because it's interesting to me. I mean, we seem like we have such healthy ecosystems and healthy rivers, and like no one's really pressuring them. But I wonder, like, what is holding them back from expanding more into my state? It's warm. The warm season is much longer. The access to vegetation, I would think, is better for if they need to spawn. So I've always been kind of curious, like, what's holding them back from growing in populations. But it seems like they exist in pretty, and I might be wrong, but it looks like smaller rivers. I mean, the Trinity is so big and vast. But maybe it's the food sources. I mean, I don't think we have buffalo and or even carp in most of the rivers in Florida that I know of. So I don't know if they're eating mullet, if they're eating, maybe it's the food source thing that's keeping them from really growing. But it just feels like, what I know of them, they have every reason to succeed in this state, and yet a lot of people don't even know that we have true alligator gar. Now in Florida, if you come down, you can come to the Everglades and ask people if they've ever seen alligator gar. They call every single gar that lives here. Yeah. All of them are alligator gar. Yeah. I'm like, have you ever wondered why none of these alligator gar are more than 2 feet long? But I gave up trying to change their mind a long time ago.
We encountered that a lot.
Yeah, we learned that pretty quickly as well.
We had to figure out one of these rivers, and well, there's basically nothing known about how many alligator gar would be there. So we would be asking around a lot if people had seen alligator gar. Mm-hmm. And then they would be like, oh, well, I just saw one over there, or a couple of days ago. There. But it's just, for example, a really big long-nosed gar or a big Florida gar. But seeing a real alligator gar, you'll know for sure it's an alligator gar.
Yeah. So to answer your question on why aren't they expanding into Florida more? So they're not sure why the populations in Florida aren't thriving as much as in Texas, for instance. but I think we have a hunch that maybe may have to do with like spawning habitat. That like these they need these floodplains, these grassy herbaceous floodplains that.
Right.
Like you'll have these giant gar coming up, like about the same as I was explaining with pike, coming up to such shallow waters, and just you have this big gar just cruising around and spawning, and it's so cool to see. We've only seen it on videos, but yeah, it's amazing. But like what we noticed, because we've been in Florida and we've been in Texas, and in Texas you just have so much floodplain, so much area of floodplain where they can spawn. And I think we cannot state this scientifically or whatever, but like we saw this, that like tributary rivers of the river that we were studying that had a lot of floodplains, so a lot of spawning opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
These seem to hold the most alligator gar. So I think it might have to do something with that, but like I'm saying, there's no hard scientific evidence on that. And well, you also, of course, have to think of like when if the species wants to expand their range, there needs to be access to the other river. So how should they migrate between the one and the other river? That I mean, they live in bays as well. They can even go to like full salt water.
Yep.
So they could do that. Like they could migrate from one river to the other through salt water, but how likely is it to have them establish a whole new population there? I think that's that. Yeah, I've doubt that it will happen. So I guess that's one of the big reasons. But yeah, like I'm saying, in Florida, the rivers where they are present, like in the Panhandle mostly, or I think all of the rivers are in the Panhandle, at least in the northwest of Florida. Yeah, they're really studying these gar and trying to figure out what they can do to protect the species better.
Yeah.
So, and I bet they'll make progress on that. Like it sounds very promising.
Yeah, that's an interesting part of like the biology of the fish, is that it has to flood for them to spawn, and it's also kind of a scary thing that I know. Like out in Texas, there's even whole seasons that go by where there's not sufficient enough rain for them to spawn. So some of those fish could go years without ever spawning. So it makes me nervous for the fish that they're so much more vulnerable to, anything people want to do to eliminate them. They just can't keep up to, if there's any real pressure on them. Because as y'all know, and what I try to like let people know is like, unlike a bass that, when they are born, they can literally be spawning within the same 12-month period of the time that they're hatched. And an alligator gar is born and it's on its own. There's no nest. There's no guardianship from parents. They're on their own on day one out in that hard, cruel world, and might have to wait a decade before they can pass the genetics on. So, when you see the images of people out here kind of pressuring them by whatever means, it's unfortunate. But yeah, you look at the Trinity River too, like, well, the famed Trinity River when it comes to alligator gar. My impression is always it's such a like awe-inspiring power that river possesses to become catastrophically flooded to the point like it becomes outright dangerous during the real flood season, because you spend time on those rivers. It's like the contours of the river is like these muddy bluffs. There's like cliffs of just mud where you can see in years past where flood conditions, the river got so big it was literally tearing the land away. There's trees hanging over. There's exposed houses and cars on the riverbed when the water goes down. So they get those kind of floods. Here in Florida, I don't think we just don't see that. And then obviously the Trinity being so big is, if it's flooding way upstate, that water's going to make its way down. Mm-hmm. The rivers we have here in Florida that I know they exist in seemed like they creek out not too far north from where, from where they are along the Gulf. But it's really interesting. But I do know I'm so envious of the photos you all have with the fish, because it just makes for a much, that's like the selfish side of me. It's like, I want to see the fish get elevated, but the photos you can get with the big oak trees and the Spanish moss and the cypress trees, I mean, it's so unique, and it's such a more like aesthetically nice looking photograph. But those fish are really interesting to me. It's awesome that you've been able to get out there and see them. It's something I want to do, but we'll see if I find time just to go look at these things. But it's really cool.
So,
Thank you.
So you were getting into like floods not happening every year, and alligator gar needing a long time between being born and spawning for the first time. And so it's actually called like a periodic life strategist, where they indeed these conditions for spawning, they don't happen often, but when they do, they will make use of it, and they have their whole life strategy just revolving around making this one opportunity in maybe 3 years, which is happening maybe once every 3 years, or maybe even less often, to be successful. And they put like more energy in this one spawning batch, right? So, but that's also why the megafish often they are periodic life strategists. Why they are so under pressure, because it takes a while for them to be mature, during which like all these years they can be harvested, right? So if there's not proper regulation, none of the fish will get, or a very small amount of the fish will get to the age where they can start spawning, and then you have these specific conditions that they need, and if these conditions aren't met because of river regulation or disconnection of floodplains or whatever, then they cannot spawn, and that makes them very, very vulnerable. So I'm glad we're starting to understand these things much better nowadays, so we can put regulations in place. Like in Texas, I think at certain when the river is flooding in certain times, like in the spawning time for alligator gar, I think it's prohibited to fish for them. So these things are at least in the Trinity, I think. But I don't know.
Some sections of the Trinity, but
yeah,
it's unfortunate that a lot of research is done on the Trinity River. They've got a great crew working on that, but a lot of other rivers also hold alligator gar, and they don't have those regulations. So, and especially with some methods, they're very easy to target when they're spawning. I mean, you see this fish of 7-8 feet swimming along in 3 feet of water. So it's really easy to see them. It's really easy to target them. And what you're actually doing is you're destroying your future fisheries, because these fish, they finally have the opportunity to spawn, and they finally reproduce and have produced a new generation of these fish. And then before they can do that, they're killed off. So I'm really in favor of installing like a closed season for the protection of the fish and the fisheries itself on all these rivers throughout their range, because it will benefit both the species and the people that go for them.
Right. Yeah. It's good to see that Texas has definitely kind of led the way and taking those steps. I feel like that species has really started to turn that corner, which is good, because I think once they turn the corner, there's no turning back. The idea of going out and filling the bottom of a boat with a bunch of dead ones is, I think those days are gone, and I think the days are numbered where it's still allowed, and which is good, because it's only going to help from here on out. But it's interesting, Max. I can see over your shoulder the skull back there, a number of skulls, but I definitely recognize that one there over your left shoulder. And we kind of joked before the call that, hey, that one probably wasn't too hard to find.
Unfortunately, it wasn't really hard to find. It's an alligator gar skull. This is not a really big one. But the unfortunate thing is we found 11 of them in like a 200-meter stretch along the Trinity Bank. So that's very unfortunate, and it just shows how many numbers go lost. And there were still alligator gar out there, but in this one, it has a dent in its skull, so we know what happened to it.
Yeah.
So this is at the Trinity, and there's a very good population there indeed.
Yeah, there's a huge population there.
If you get rivers where there's not that many alligator gar, and you get people bow fishing for them, or harvesting in any other way. That's not really a good thing.
Yeah.
So really why there wasn't much research into alligator gar at first, like to us from Europe, from the Netherlands, it sounds so crazy, but you guys have this term trash fish. And I know you like to fish for them. You're one of the exceptions that really loves the trash fish. But there is no such thing as trash fish. Maybe the only thing I could consider a trash fish is when it is an exotic species that really destroys the ecosystem.
Yeah, like invasive species. Yeah.
But like any native species that belongs in the ecosystem and has a vital role in the ecosystem cannot be a trash fish and needs to be treated with respect and shouldn't be like
this goes especially for apex predator fish species because they're a major part of the balance in the ecosystem, and a lot of people are not aware of what these big species do. So this whole food web, every species, from the small ones to the big ones, they're all connected, and these big fish, they have an effect on the ecosystem called top-down regulation. And well, that is very important to keep the ecosystem in balance. So if alligator gar or any other big predator goes missing, then the ecosystem will shift to a different state, which may not be beneficial. So one very famous example is the wolves going lost in Yellowstone Park. And then you have got all these mammals, all deer and other species, they started eating away the vegetation, and that changed the landscape completely. And then they reintroduced the wolves, and the ecosystem all of a sudden blossomed again. So the same thing goes for the underwater world.
Yep. And so the reason, what I was getting into, why this research on alligator gar and interest in general wasn't there, because they were considered trash fish and no one thought of them as valuable until scientists decided, hey, this makes no sense. We need to start studying them. They're under pressure. Their populations are in decline. And then when this shifted, like this idea of how we view alligator gar, a lot of research started on the species, and I get that happened in 2008 from the top of my head, and now we got all this knowledge and all these studies finished or being conducted, and that's a really good thing. But we came from far, right? So
it's a process. It's not going fast. I mean, first it's probably scientific communities that know about fish and what they do. And it takes a lot of time for like the general audience, general public to accept, or to even get this knowledge and to accept it. I mean, it's also a bit of opinion going on out there, and it takes time. But in the end, you can either lose a species, which has happened to alligator gar in many states because we didn't know what they were doing. There were even eradication efforts from research institution going on.
Gar rodeos.
But now there's this switch, and it's not too late. I mean, there are still large numbers of alligator gar in several rivers. We already discussed that for the Trinity. And well, why not do the same for different species or different rivers with alligator gar?
Yeah, it's one of those weird things. I don't understand, like the institutional resistance by some people to, I don't know, admit that they're wrong, try to do something different. If there's any silver lining, I guess, to like the social media world, which obviously it can be really bad, but it could also be good, is that you're seeing so many more of these like specialty groups who, are trying to shift that ideology of trash fish to be rough fish. And now even people who say rough fish are saying maybe we need to call it non-traditional game fish. It's like, so I think those perceptions are changing. It's a really, really, I mean, better late than never, I guess, for the culture of anglers in the United States to get on board with wanting to become specialists at a lot of different species. But you're definitely seeing it more now. But it is funny when you encounter those people that just flat out refuse to admit that they are wrong. And I know that you've probably seen the pushback. If you were to say in certain areas, the populations are in decline, there's a lot of people that will disagree because their spot, that's not true. and they feel as though if their spot, that's not true. It's that's what exists on the big picture. And it's very frustrating. I have a hard time even engaging in the conversations, but it's like somebody needs to, but you feel like you don't really get anywhere trying to correct somebody on the internet. But it's funny when you were mentioning earlier too, I have to throw this out there because it's when you talk about the big fish stories or the mythical giant fish, and people here saying that, oh yeah, or have you seen any alligator gar in XYZ area? Yeah, we saw one 5 minutes ago. One of the ones that I hear a lot here because alligator gar have their stories. One of the famous ones, I don't know if y'all ever heard it while you were here talking to locals, but it's like the first one that comes up is when they talk about the 14-footer that they saw. Like, I was in a 14-foot John boat, and this thing came up beside me. Its head was on one end of the boat, and its tail was on the other end of the boat. It was 14 feet long. Yeah, please tell me y'all never heard that one.
We heard some of those stories, but the thing is, these fish, they do get really big, and in the water, everything looks bigger, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and in your imagination, because it's so impressive to see such a big fish, you start exaggerating. Yeah,
it's unique. And the thing is, these fish, they take up to, well over 50 years to reach those giant sizes. And seeing one nowadays of giant proportions is becoming increasingly rare, because these fish that have been around so long, they've managed somehow to evade all of these catch efforts or eradication efforts even, and they're still out there. Mm-hmm. But if they get killed beforehand, those chances are way bigger. But there are a lot of stories about out of proportion alligator gar out there. But I mean, if they see a big one, I guess they should just be very happy that they even saw one that's really big.
I'm curious, when y'all go back home to show, the research that you've done and show the images, and the people, who live locally where you live see this, what is like the public's perception of them from people over there? I always have to know that, because I know what people here will kind of say, but I'm always curious what people who live in different parts of the world, when they see an alligator gar, like, what do they think? Are they more interested? Are they afraid? Are they, what are they thinking?
I can do a facial expression of what they think.
Shock and awe, huh?
Yes. We don't really have any dangerous, or they're not dangerous, but animals that look menacing to a human in the Netherlands. So when they see these fish that look like basically a dinosaur, it's something beyond their imagination. There's something still out there. And they're indeed very curious about, how did you find these things? Why did you go out there? Why did you even get in the water with them? So the reactions are amazing. And they're all very curious, and they're all amazed by, these strange, unique animals.
So I kind of believe that in the Netherlands, like, we're a super, super populated country, and every inch of the Netherlands is like adapted by us to be exploited or whatever, or this part is nature, this is agriculture, this is whatever, this is city, so, and we really got like, nature in the Netherlands is it's a sad thing, let's put it this way. So I feel like people in the Netherlands are also kind of disconnected to a lot of nature stuff.
Yeah.
And like Max and I, we really have been drawn to this from when we were very young. So we were like looking up, trying to look up information about fish around the world or whatever. Maybe also other groups of species like reptiles or whatever. But like we really went out of our way to learn more about this stuff. But most people in the Netherlands, they just don't know. They never encountered anything like it, and they've never researched it or whatever. And then when they see this, they are just amazed. So
they think it's far, far away from their home, and that it's like unreachable or whatever. And we decided to just get out there and explore. And see if we can find these animals ourselves.
Yeah, that's really cool.
That's what we did.
I also like seeing like some of the things that y'all run into, like incident to the pursuit of the target animal, like when you're catching like bycatch or accidental things. I got a real kick out of when you were describing when y'all were, and I guess this wasn't incidental, but it crossed my mind thinking about, perceptions of fish from one part of the world to the next. So and we've kind of touched on the topic of like trash fish and like the undesirable fish, that kind of perception that exists a lot here. But I thought it was real funny yesterday, and I want to revisit the conversation because we cut it off too short. We all had things we needed to do. But when you were describing trying to catch largemouth bass in the U.S., that was an entertaining conversation because, you go from talking about one of the least popular fish on the continent to the most popular fish on the continent. And I got a real kick out of you talking about you were trying to utilize the tactics that you've developed overseas on our bass. But that was entertaining. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, we tried to. Well, the first time we went out bass fishing was with a couple of research colleagues, and well, it was a river that didn't contain a lot of really big bass. So we went wade fishing, and we thought, well, let's use pike lures. Well, not the giant ones I just showed you, but still pretty big baits. And
what we used in the river were, for pike lures, considered to me very small, but to them for that river was considered very big. So they were maybe using like this size bait, like really tiny crankbaits or whatever, or beetle spinners or whatever, and we just sized it up like quite a bit. So Max, go ahead.
And at first they were like, "Oh, there goes a pike lure," and then all of a sudden I hooked into a fish, and they're like, "Wait, is he serious? Does he have one on there?" And the first one that we reeled in was the biggest one that they had, that they had caught thus far. And then in the next few weeks, we would go out more and more, and we would catch, well, every single time.
And so this river really only really had smaller bass, right? And most of what you would catch was maybe this size, right? But then, like, we did the same thing on like small lakes or whatever, where there were actually bigger bass. Like, I guess the part where we were at, like we were in the Panhandle in Florida, and you don't have the giant 10-pounders as much as in the middle of Florida.
Yeah, and we didn't fish in spawning season or whatever, so these fish were a lot more slim.
But we just started using like pike jerk baits, like this size for these bass, and we caught them like over 5 pound, I think. I don't know. We never really weighed them, but like they were good size bass, and
we consider them nice if our hand basically fits inside there.
Yeah.
So
that's right.
We don't know how much they weigh.
That's how we measure them too.
Yeah.
If your fist can go in their mouth, it's a good one.
So they were not giants for if you consider what the middle of Florida has, but for the part that we were fishing, they were pretty big, and like just sizing up your baits and it just works apparently. So.
Yeah, the side of that I think so entertaining is that, our local guys gave you the funny looks like, well, what are these guys doing? They don't know what they're doing. But it's a good reminder that like a little bit of humility can take you a long way in fishing if you'll just humble yourself and understand that like it's okay to try different things. Like you don't know it all. Nobody knows it all. But bass fishing is one of those things where they're so heavily pressured here in the States. Most people, I mean, I started as a bass fisherman. Most people's journey as anglers start fishing local ponds for bass. So that is a species that has almost no matter where you go, they've seen it all. They get pressured so hard. So, these typical lures, I don't know, over time they become more weary of them. So, there's some value in throwing something different at these fish. And that's what always happens. It seems like every couple of years, this new, wacky, wild looking lure explodes onto the market and starts catching the hell out of the fish. And then it just sort of like starts going down in productivity because and that's part of the reason why people love bass so much. It's one of those very adaptable fish that has a lot of variables. So like you're constantly needing to adapt and change and grow and learn and do research to figure out. And it's probably why they're like our national freshwater sport fish. But Max, it touched my heart when I saw photos of you holding these big monster bowfin, because that is actually, in case you didn't know, that is, of all the fish that I've caught, is my number one most favorite fish. Like that is the fish that got me into fishing. Like I went fishing a lot when I was a kid, but it was like, it was just an excuse for me to go play at the creek. But when I caught a bowfin when I was like 13 years old, it was like a seed was like planted into my brain. There's just, and everything else grew from there. So when I saw you holding that, I was like, oh, that is awesome. And you've caught a few of them, big ones. But I'm curious, like, what was your impression of those? How did you come across that species?
So first of all, bowfin that we've seen on your page, they're awesome. they're big. But the first time we saw bowfin was actually during alligator gar research, and on our way to one of the sites that we were looking for alligator gar, we had to go through this crystal clear cold water creek, and we saw one swim by, and we were like, well, that's a cool looking fish. We're coming back for you. So next time we went back, and we actually caught one pretty fast. And we took a really awesome picture, underwater picture with it. Don't know if that was the picture you were talking about.
I've seen a few of them. I think I liked all of them. So
all right. Yeah, we took one underwater with him. So that was really cool. And unfortunately, we didn't fish for them a lot. I wish we would have fished for them more often, but they're awesome. We also caught them during research, a couple of them. And well, yeah, those were huge. I believe Florian got one in that was really big. And they're also very prehistoric looking fish, and they're awesome.
Yeah, we're right there with you. That bowfin are so cool.
Yeah, that's another one kind of on that same category with the alligator gar that's looked at much with like disdain and trash fish, and they're kind of growing in popularity a little bit, but they're not as magnificent as, say an 8-foot alligator gar. Like the alligator gar sells itself, and like you can quickly get people's attention with that. So the bowfin's got a little bit of a harder hill to climb, but at the same time, I don't think they're not at risk of being eliminated either. But I don't know. For me, I've always kind of had that soft spot in my heart for like the survivor fish, like the prehistoric fish, because like from the lens of like an angler who wants to go out and do battle with like the toughest, just nastiest, like hardcore fish. When I look at a fish like that, like you think about prehistoric fish, something like a sawfish, giant sturgeon, alligator gar, paddlefish. At least here in North America, those are the ones I'm familiar with. It seems like the common denominator with them is they either grow to tremendous size, they have armor-plated scales, they have like hardware that they can defend themselves with, or they have a unique instrument like the paddlefish has, or they have some size, like something that would allow them to contend with the unimaginable beasts that they once roamed the earth with. But then you got a bowfin, all they have is attitude. They're not big giant fish. They don't have armor-plated scales. They're kind of a soft-bodied fish. But when you hook into them, it's like it all like makes sense. Like, okay, like they just got by being just nasty dog fighters. So that was always what sort of drew me into them, because I'm like, here is a species of fish that has survived a lot of like the Earth's craziest moments. I mean, whatever it was that killed off 70% of all life on Earth millions of years ago, they made it through that. They made it through crazy different types of climate changes. They've made it through habitat encroachment. So I'm like, okay, well, that thing is clearly a fighter. That's what I want to chase. But so when I saw y'all's photos of those things, I'm like, oh, I got to ask about that for sure.
Yeah, they're awesome fish. They're and you talked about them looking kind of dull, but they've got some unique features. Like if you look at their nose, they're like these little tubes that go out of them. And if you see a boning fish, if you see a bowfin in spawning colors, it's it turns into a boning fish. But if you see one in spawning colors, it's just awesome. They get all these green colors going on, and I think if people would see something like that, they would get a lot of more appreciation. And also, if they realize that they've been around for so long, surviving everything, those fish deserve some recognition. And they're just very cool.
Yeah, I agree. It's a wild fish. It's a fish that's got, I don't know, I've not encountered anything else that has the same sort of attitude. And I don't know if you've ever had the opportunity, like when they get scary, is if you come up on like the fry ball, like when the male is guarding the young, they don't give a crap what you are, who you are. In certain scenarios, those things will literally launch themselves out of the water. They don't care if you're a human being, an elephant, a bird. It sounds corny to say it, but that's a scenario. They will go after you. So it's just a wild fish. Not a lot that would do that, but it just speaks to their ability to, I don't know, push their species forward, because they obviously aggressively defend that their next generations. But yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that when we were in Florida, where these bowfin were around, we didn't really have the resources to go out. We didn't have a boat or whatever in our spare time. And like what you are doing, you are going to these really remote locations for these big bowfin, and that's where we found them during our research as well. And we just we didn't really have the opportunity to go out like that and go on a river and go to the spot where there's big bowfin. But we would have loved to do that. Like it's so much fun. But then in Texas, like our second time in the USA, we just devoted to the idea of just buying our own John boat for the half year that we were there. And man, we had so many opportunities then, and we only mostly used it for almost exclusively used it for alligator gar fishing, where we just go out for the entire weekend, fish for them recreationally, and then during the week we'd study them for science. But
right.
Yeah, but without that boat, we would never have caught any alligator gar, I think, on rod and reel. And it was a good decision to buy that boat for that half year that we were there.
Oh, 100%. Because I don't know, my experience is it's really hard to find good solid ground to fish from on those rivers. It's not a lot of bank fishing, but in my experience with alligator gar, I've done most of it with a kayak or a canoe. So it's like if you can just get in the water, even with something as small as a canoe, you can have a lot of success. But I don't know, the bank fishing is just almost impossible over there, especially and if you do find good ground that you can stand on, you're probably trespassing on some old cattle rancher's land, and you don't want to do all that down there.
Yeah, and I mean, getting a boat in is also, it can be very hard. Yeah. I mean, we didn't have the smallest engine, but we carried that thing down cliffs and everything, and
it was so
we got through areas that you would normally not get to with a boat. We carried our boat, we dragged it, I'm survived that thing, even kept floating in the end.
Yeah, and our boat too, like we had this custom made casting platform, a wooden platform that they built into it when we bought the boat, and that just absorbs all the water, right? So man, the boat would get heavy, and we had to carry those off cliffs and for like such long distances. Like it would just destroy us. But me, Max is a beast, but I'm not a beast. But it was worth all the effort.
Yeah, but, and also tracking alligator gar during the research project, we also had to go places that you shouldn't probably go there. I mean, we once ran a tributary, and on our way back it was completely dried up.
Oh my goodness!
We literally had to drag the boat through the mud or lifted through a tree, and all kinds of crazy stuff. And we could fill a whole podcast with crazy things that went on with boats and getting back to fishing or from fishing spots.
No kidding. Well, Max, I've looked all through your page and I've seen some of the things that, I don't know, maybe it makes a little more sense. You're able to physically do that. I've seen like the Viking races that you're doing, some of the fitness pursuits that you have. So, obviously you're more than just an angler and a guy that deals with big fish. And I've seen the MMA stuff, the grappling, which is, I grew up wrestling. So it's like, the interest is always there when I see somebody, especially that's like good with grappling. But I've seen that. So it makes a little more sense that you can go out there and do battle with these giant fish and have to, I don't know, roll your sleeves up and trudge through. Because I know how nasty that mud can get too. It's like you can't go to Texas for alligator gar, and it's unavoidable. The mud just sticks to you. It stays with you. I have clothes in my closet right now that will never be the same because they've been through 100 laundry cycles and the red clay stains still hold to them. And, I just give up. So I'm like, if I'm going to go after alligator gar, that's the same wardrobe that I'll take because they've already been lost to the river.
The fishing spots in Texas, the mud and everything, it just eats away at your gear, your clothes, your shoes, everything. But it's all worth it when you finally get to see and handle one of these amazing creatures, whether it's alligator gar, bowfin, sturgeon, whatever. And it's an advantage to have some physical fitness when chasing these fish.
Yeah, that's been kind of a common theme on some of the folks that I've had on here, and just, trying to make sure that, if you enjoy something that much, you probably want to make sure that you're going to be able to enjoy it for longer. So living an active lifestyle, living a healthy lifestyle is important because you don't want to get to a point where you're unable to do it at age 40, 50, whatever. Now you have to stop, all because you didn't lay proper groundwork ahead of time by keeping yourself healthy. But, man, I know we're getting a little short on time. I could talk to you all for hours. It's been very, very entertaining. Even yesterday, I had to hit the record button when that crazy stuff was going down. But, when I look at all the things that y'all have done in the years past and continue to do, I'm like, I don't know. I'm like curious, like what's next? Y'all got any big expeditions planned for this year, next year? You got like a especially like big trip sort of like that you want to go do, but you're working towards, like, what's next? So, either one of you can cover that one.
Yeah, for me, there's two things going on. One recreationally and one research-wise. So at the moment, research-wise, I'm setting up like one of the first really big field studies on Welsh catfish, European catfish in the Netherlands, because those things are increasing in numbers and there's not a lot known about what their impact on the ecosystem is. So I'm setting up that study right now. Hopefully I'll be able to do some field work for that later this year. And then recreationally, because last time I wasn't able to join on Florian's piraiba adventure because I had to do research in the Netherlands. I've got probably got that planned in October this year. And after that, maybe it's going to be arapaima, maybe it's going to be white sturgeon. Those are also a couple of species that are really high up on our list.
How about you, Florian?
Yeah, for me, so I just did my big trip abroad. So, and given my personal situation, I don't foresee that I'll be going like over the ocean for something like this in the near future, but who knows? But like, I guess the fish that has always been on top of my list for some reason, even though you might argue that in ways alligator gar are even cooler and piraiba are much crazier and stronger, is arapaima. Lure fishing for arapaima is really, really up there on the list for me. So I really hope to do that in the near future. Say near future would be a couple of years, but man, we'll see. I don't know what life will bring me. But on the short term, well, I'm hoping to assist Max in the fieldwork for his catfish study in the Netherlands, because they need to catch them and they're very hard to catch with nets. So you'll have to use rod and reels. So, I mean, that's going to be fun. And then I guess the easy thing for us to do is to go to like France or whatever for European or Welsh catfish, because there's many more there.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's basically for us an easier way to catch these giant fish kind of nearby. And then, I mean, there's some other species maybe close by that would get the attention first, probably due to money, money availability. But yeah, those are the biggest plans, I guess.
Yeah, that's awesome. I look forward to seeing it, and I can relate. I've never, like I told y'all yesterday, I've never been out of the United States, so I envy the adventures that y'all are getting to be on, both recreationally and that's very impactful work that's helping the bigger picture. Maybe I'm too selfish. I just want to go catch these big fish to get a really cool photo out of it. But y'all are embarking on a lot of these trips, and you're actually doing something that's helping. So that's admirable. But my passport is supposed to be here in March, so I have some personal plans. I'm right there with you with the arapaima thing. That's sort of like, I don't know, the queen of the river. That's like, the one on the pedestal for a lot of people, but it is interesting. And I've said the same thing about alligator gar. You could make the argument it's a cooler fish, but maybe they just don't live in as pristine or an interesting. For me, it's like some of the arapaima thing is it's because of where it's at. And, totally all that happens around you. It's like a bigger scope thing. And, you're fishing for alligator gar. You're smelling the ambient air is that of cow manure and like a nearby interstate. Whereas, I don't know, you're going to get a more unique and uniquely wild experience over there. So,
to us, the United States was already really, really awesome. I mean, you've got such a diverse country. You've got so many species, and well, we're for sure coming back someday, hopefully sooner rather than later. But you've got plenty of species and area to cover over there. And if you ever want to catch a big pike, then you know where the Netherlands is.
Oh, yeah. I got to add that one to the list. It's good to have connections who do these things, too, just to be able to reach out. So just got to lay the groundwork for such a trip.
I think one that's also been on the list for me, thanks to you, is the Goliath grouper from shore. Just totally doing it by yourself. I think if we ever get back to the US, I think that's something I really want to give a try.
I'd be happy to do that. It's not that difficult. Doing it alone is a little weird. It's very risky, mostly because I don't know. Maybe I need to make more friends down here, and then on top of that, it's people that are willing to go do that. But it's not hard. It's the interesting thing is you paddle your baits out in a kayak, you drop them right beside a bridge piling, and then it's a mad dash back to shore with the kayak, because you don't want them to eat it before you get back to shore, because they get back in the pilings like that. And my rigs alone are $150. You lose all that line. The line is of such a high caliber. Like if you get in the snags, you can't just break it off. But it's definitely a cool experience. I don't know. I know, and I've seen photos of some of the Goliaths that y'all have. I think they were Goliaths that y'all had caught, but it's a really cool thing. I'd be happy to help if y'all want to try that. It's
cool.
I can't say it's hard to do because they're going to eat. Like it's one of those fish that's not going to turn down an easy meal. And they really don't move around. That's the one funny thing about that fish is like if you're fishing on one specific wreck, a lot of times people are just catching the same fish over and over and over and over. But anyway, yeah, I'd be happy to help that. So we have spent the last hour and 20 minutes plus talking about all these adventures and these crazy photos and all the things you're working on. So people listening are going to want to know where they can see that at. And obviously I'm going to add your individual social media links, but where could people find you? I know y'all have a shared page, and then each of you can just expand on your individual pages where they might be able to see some of the stuff you're working on and see some of these phenomenal fish photos.
Thank you. It's our shared page is called Fishing and Conservation. And we also go by the name of the Crazy Dutchman because, well, that was one of the nicknames we got because we got in the water with all these fish and also other animals like rattlesnakes. But and then our individual pages, well, Florian can share his first.
Yeah, so my individual page would be Florian K underscore, it's called, I guess, Kappen, or fishing, sorry, Florian K underscore fishing. And so I on my personal page, I only post like the big fish I catch. So I'll catch way more than I post, but the diamonds that I catch, I'll post on there. And I guess on our shared page, we post also the diamonds for our recreational fishing, and we'll share our research pictures. And I don't share those on my personal page because I really devoted that one to fishing. So
yeah.
And apart from that, no, I don't think I have anything where I share my stuff. It's really Instagram.
Yes. So my Instagram page would be Maximilian _ Claus _ fishing. And well, Claus is spelled the same way as Santa Claus because he's might be my grandpa. But yeah, that would be our two personal pages, and then of course our shared page.
Yeah, what's awesome. I've been following y'all stuff for a long time. I don't know how it hasn't exploded into a big followership, but I think all that tells me is you're doing it in the most pure way. But anybody that wants to see, and it's high quality photos, and we didn't even touch on that, but it's like the photos that y'all are taking are very high quality, all proper fish handling, partially submerged, just monster, an admirable fish. Awesome stuff. So I would encourage anybody listening, and I'm going to throw the links up on the screen. I'm going to put them in the description of everything, but y'all got to check out what these guys are doing. Really awesome stuff. So I appreciate both of your times from all the way across the ocean and joining me to talk about some of these things.
Yeah, thanks for inviting us. We really enjoyed being on here and talking to you, of course. And well, I hope we can educate some people or just share adventures and share these amazing animals and show what's possible and what's still out there.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you also from me. Yeah, I really enjoyed this talk, like connecting with anglers like yourself. Like, I don't know, it's just amazingly fun, and like you do something very unique. We do the same thing, I guess, and that just unites in some way. It's yeah, I had a lot of fun talking about this stuff, and hopefully we'll get a chance to fish together someday.
Absolutely. I see it happening for sure. We'll have to make it happen. If y'all come through Florida, I will go way out of my way to try to meet up and do whatever we got to do. That'd be really cool. But anyway, guys, I appreciate both of your times. And we'll be in touch for sure. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you very much.
All right, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.